Mr. Vampire is a 1985 Hong Kong comedy horror film directed by Ricky Lau in his directorial debut, and also produced by Sammo Hung. The film's box office success led to the creation of a Mr. Vampire franchise, with the release of 4 sequels directed by Ricky Lau from 1986 to 1992, and subsequent similarly themed films with different directors released between 1987 and 1991. The vampire of the film is based on the jiangshi, the hopping corpses of Chinese folklore. The film was released under the Chinese title, literally, "Hold Your Breath for a Moment," in Taiwan. The film was the breakthrough success of the jiangshi genre, a trend popular in Hong Kong during the 1980s, and established many of the genre's recognizable tropes. Plot: Master Cao is a Taoist priest who performs magic that maintains control over spirits and irrepressible vampires. Together with his inept students, Man Choi and Chao Sang, he resides in a large house protected from the spiritual world with talismans and amulets. One day, he accepts an assignment from a wealthy businessman, Yam, to remove Yam's deceased father from his grave and rebury him, with the hopes that doing so will bring more prosperity to the Yam family. Unfortunately, upon opening the coffin, Cao notices the body is still intact, even though it has been years since he died. Realizing that it is a vampire, Cao orders it to be moved to his house for further study and to be subject to spells that will prevent it from awakening. Cao deduces that Yam's father had died angry, and his last breath became stuck in his body for years, causing it to keep him alive and reducing it to a mindless state. Once in the house, Choi and Sang cover the coffin with enchanted ink to keep the vampire from escaping. However, they forgot to cover the bottom of the coffin, and the vampire breaks out 2 nights later and escapes from the house, heading straight for Yam's home. It savagely kills Yam and goes into hiding before morning. Ye, an incompetent police inspector who is smitten with Yam's daughter Ting, blames Cao for murdering Yam and arrests him. Monsieur Cao is imprisoned in the local jail and Yam's body is placed in a makeshift morgue nearby. Choi stays at Yam's house to protect Ting. Sang breaks in to free his master, only to witness Yam reawakening as a vampire. Cao and Sang engage it in battle and kill it. Ye realizes his mistake in framing Cao earlier and accepts the fact that another vampire is on the loose. The vampire again invades Yam's house, forcing Choi and Ting to hide. Cao and Sang arrive in time to wound it in battle and forcing it to flee, but not before it attacks and critically wounds Choi. Cao invites Ting to stay at his house for safety. The next morning, after examining Choi's wounds, Cao claims he too may become a vampire. He orders Sang to feed Choi with glutinous rice, claiming it may decrease the vampire's venom in Choi's body and bring him back to his normal state. While shopping for the rice, however, Sang fails to notice that the shady merchant deliberately mixed different kinds of rice in the bag. While Sang rides home, he is lured by a mysterious woman into her home. He soon deduces she is a spirit, but she uses her supernatural power to seduce him. They sleep together for the night. When Sang arrives back at Cao's house, the priest is quick to notice his student's predicament. That night, he silently follows Sang to the spirit's house. The spirit transforms into a hideous ghoul and attempts to kill Cao, but fails at the hands of his talismans. She bewitches Sang to turn on his master, but after a brief fight, Cao breaks the spell and she escapes. The next night, Cao ties Sang to a chair and prepares to capture and eliminate the spirit. Sure enough, she arrives at their house and Cao chases her throughout. As Sang tries to free himself, Choi turns into a vampire and attacks him amidst the chaos. Kao restrains Choi and almost terminates the spirit, but stops when Sang begs him to let her go. Saddened she can no longer be with Sang, the spirit flies away. Over the next few days, Kao restores Choi's health and turns him back to human. Wei brings in news that the vampire is now active again. When Kao leaves to investigate, the vampire, now in an almost demonic form, invades Kao's place. After pushing Choi off a balcony, it turns its attention to Ting and Wei. But Kao and Sang again divert its attention. Their combined efforts, however, are not enough to destroy it. Finally, Kao's fellow Taoist priest, Four Eyes, shows up by coincidence, and they manage to destroy the vampire by burning it alive. The film ends with Four Eyes realizing that the vampires he is escorting have accidentally been destroyed in the fire as well. Cast: Lam Qingying as Master Kao, a unibrowed priest specializing in Taoist supernatural arts. Ricky Hui as Man Choi, Kao's student. Qin Shu Ho as Chao Sang, Kao's student. Moon Li as Ting Ting, Master Yam's daughter. Huang Ha as Master Yam, a rich man. He is apparently killed by the vampire but later rises from the dead to become like his late father. Anthony Chan as Priest Four Eyes, Kao's friend. He uses magic to control hopping corpses and transport them to their hometowns for burial. Wang Shufeng as Jade, a female ghost who seduces Chao Sang. Billy Lau as Wei, the cowardly police inspector. He is also Ting Ting's cousin. Yuan Hua as a hopping corpse. Production. Casting. Director Ricky Lau wanted a fresh-faced girl whom people were unfamiliar with to play the role of Mr. Yam's daughter, so he avoided choosing a well-known actress. He spotted dancer Moon Li at a performance and approached her and asked, "Are you interested in acting, as you'd fit into a part one have?" Quote, Lam Qingying was recommended to the director by Sammo Hung to play the main role. The director had seen Lam before on The Prodigal Son, which the director had worked on. The director noted in an interview that, "He seems cold but actually he is with a good heart." That was why he was suitable for the role. The director had still not settled the actress to play Ghost's role. The role ended up going to Wang Shufeng, who impressed Ricky Lau in her previous film, Person at the End. Qin Shu Ho was chosen because he knew kung fu and all about action scenes. The director noted in an interview, "He was serious and used no stuntmen." Sammo Hung, producer, hired Billy Lau to provide additional comedy to Mr. Vampire, writing and inspiration. According to the producer Sammo Hung, the idea for Mr. Vampire originated through childhood stories he heard from his mother, who was also an actress. One of the major sources of inspiration for the film Mr. Vampire came from a collection of supernatural tales called Strange Stories from a Chinese studio by Qing Dynasty writer Pu Songling. Mr. Vampire is based on a story of a resurrected corpse. The script was not written by Ricky Lau alone. It was written by many script writers, including Roy Suzzetto, Chak Han, Wang Ying and Barry Wong. Ping Yiu. When the script was finished, Eric Sang reviewed it. Sammo Hung also reviewed it and gave Lau some ideas. In an interview the director mentioned, compared with nowadays, the situation was different because now they often use less time to finish the script. In the original script, the ghost, Jade, was written to die during the film, but during filming, Lau decided to change the ending and keep her alive so that it would be more romantic. The director and writers used the cheap gimmick only once, when they made a man in poor-quality gorilla suit chase the characters down a mountain. Filming and locations. Filming lasted more than 5 months to almost half a year. On the set, the actors would sometimes crack jokes, and if director Ricky Lau liked them, he would retain those scenes in the film. Monsieur, the love scene that contained no violence, took 2 weeks to complete. In addition to a further 3 weeks of shooting in Taiwan, the production team built a village that appeared in the opening and ending scenes of the film, while a few scenes were shot on a standing set near Taipei because they lacked a good studio set of a long street running into the distance, which could be done by CGI in more recent times. The scene in which a dead body was found was shot in Taiwan on a set with stone arches. In that set, a real street was constructed from stone, and has been reused for other films and television series. In Hong Kong, most studios could not afford a standing set. It took 1 week in Taiwan to set up the sets mentioned above. The Golden Harvest Studios were used as the set for the scene where Master Cow is in jail. The scene where the body is being exhumed was filmed just out of the New Territories in Hong Kong. The background has been used in movies such as The Young Master and the end fight in the 36th Chamber of Shaolin. Also filmed in the New Territories were scenes where the police went to find the vampire in the cave and the scene in which a body is being burnt. Producer Sammo Hung visited the set less frequently to promote a relaxed atmosphere, as he was aware that his presence may make the cast and crew nervous. Hung took a hands-off role on the film and entrusted Mr. Vampire to protege director Ricky Lau. A real snake was used in the scene, which showed one being cut, and was later used to make snake soup. This was because the production team could not afford a fake snake. This was also the case in a scene where a chicken's blood is needed and its throat is cut and a bowl is held under its neck to collect the blood. Mr. Vampire is set in the early Republic, as can be seen from the 5 colored star cap emblems on the modern uniforms. But the vampire's costume belonged to the previous dynasty, the Qing dynasty. Contrary to a commentator's notes, oddly in one scene after Chow Sang woke up, Ting Ting had a white flower in her hair which signifies morning, but it is nighttime in the film. Monsieur. Action scenes in the movie were designed by both the director and Chinny Ying, who was an action director as well. There wasn't much time for the director and actors to sleep. The director and actors had 2 shifts, 12 hours per shift. The day shift is from 7 in the morning till 7 in the evening. The night shift is from 7 in the evening work till 7 in the morning, and many actors didn't really sleep for maybe 2 weeks. During filming in the extremely hot summer months, Yuen Hua suffered as he was not allowed to remove the plastic from his face. After several hours in the makeup chair, he would spend the working day unable to move, talk or eat properly. Ironically, Ricky Lau cut out many of Yuen's footage from the finished film, as he felt that too many vampire hopping would slow down the pace. Near the end of shooting Mr. Vampire, the cast and crew came under pressure to work faster, as the movie screening was around the corner. Moon Lee recalls the Mr. Vampire shoot as a largely enjoyable experience. Lam Ching-ying always looked serious during filming. He was dedicated and professional. Although friends have brought up his sense of humor, it has long been rumored that Hung effectively directed Mr. Vampire on his own, with the inexperienced Ricky Lau serving as his assistant. Hung has always denied the story, and Chin Shu-ho has confirmed Ricky Lau as the true director of Mr. Vampire. Mr. Vampire is credited as the very first film directed by Hong Kong director Ricky Lau. Lau had previously worked with Hung, the producer, as a camera operator. Stunts at different parts of the movie. Wires were used. The production staff had to take care of the wires. To ensure they do not show on screen, they would spray the wires in the same color as the set background. If the wires were shown, they would have to take it overseas for editing, which was not popular at that time. However, no wires were used in the scene where actor Chen Shu-ho performed a backflip up the door. Action director Yuan Hua doubled as a vampire for some of the more acrobatic shots, such as the end scene depicting the vampire being burnt. The flames and oil were real. Music. Most of Mr. Vampire's atmospheric scores that were both spooky and humorous was mainly supplied by Anders Nelson's music production company, The Melody Bank. Jade's theme song, GWAI San Noeng, Ghost Bride, was performed by the JIER Choir. The music was written by Leon Tat and lyrics were written by Cheng Kwok Kong. Budget. Mr. Vampire was originally given a budget of $4.5 million. But halfway through production, it was already depleted. The director then had to ask for more money and was given a further $1 million to finish the film this year. After 1 week, the money was also spent. When the film was finally finished, it cost $8.5 million. Sammo estimated the film would cost $2 to $3 million. Lost to Golden Harvest. Accolades. Mr. Vampire was nominated for 13 awards, including 2 for Best Supporting Actor, Billy Lau and Lam Ching-ying. Out of the 13 nominations, the film only received 1 award for Best Original Film Score. Box office. Mr. Vampire ran in cinemas from the 7th of November 1985 to the 4th of December 1985 and grossed a total of $20,092,129. This was the same year that Sammo Hung and Jackie Chan's movies were at the box office, with My Lucky Stars, Police Story and Heart of Dragon all exceeding Mr. Vampire's considerable takings. Mr. Vampire was given a midnight premiere at Grand Ocean, Hong Kong. The director was so worried about the success of this movie as well as his directing career. He stood outside during the screening, greeting guests until he heard the audience starting to laugh. Distribution rights and classification. Sino-Cine Co. Limited bought the UK distribution rights to Mr. Vampire and the BBFC classified the film as 15, without any cuts, and then it was released March 1986. The following year, Chinatown Cinema bought the Australia distribution rights and the movie was classified M. Mature, no one under the age of 15. It was classified 1 January 1986. In Canada, the Manitoba Film Classification Board classified the film as 14 for festival cinema. Ontario Film Review Board classified Mr. Vampire 1 April 1986 as restricted, 18 years of age or older. Unari Acute GIE du Cinéma du Québec was classified 1986 as 14 and then reclassified 9 September 2004 as Visa General. General rating. All ages. In Singapore, the movie was cut and classified as PG and later was reclassified to NC-16. Not suitable for children under 16. Critical reception. Mr. Vampire was well received in Taiwan, Southeast Asia, and especially in Japan, where it inspired a vampire craze with toys and a lot of other merchandise that had a vampire on them. This year, the film was featured as part of Channel 4's Chinese Ghost Story season in 1990, introduced by Jonathan Ross, being played alongside some similar movies in the genre including Encounters of the Spooky Kind, Zoo Warriors from the Magic Mountain, Esprit de Mort, Spiritual Love and Rouge. In a DVD commentary of Mr. Vampire, Bay Logan said, "Mr. Vampire is very basic visual effects and was only really the start of visual effects in Hong Kong filmmaking. Love Film described it as, quite possibly the seminal entry in HK's famous horror comedy genre, and a fun movie that showcases Lam Ching-ying at his best. The English-language soundtrack made for Mr. Vampire is low quality, redubbing the characters with bland mid-American accents. The sound effects are inadequate. Clomping footsteps are added as a distracting effect. This version of the film is not widely circulated. Mr. Vampire made the Hong Kong Film Archive's 100 must-see Hong Kong movies at number 77. Spin-off media. English version. Golden Harvest attempted to make an English-language version of Mr. Vampire under the title Demon Hunters. The film was produced by David Chan. However, the team could not get Lam Ching-ying to reprise his role because the latter was busy with another film overseas. Yuan Hua, who worked on the original Mr. Vampire, replaced Lam and handled the action sequences as well. American actor Jack Scalia, who acted in the 1978 television series Dallas, was also recruited into the cast. Initially Tanya Roberts from Charlie's Angels and Sheena, Queen of the Jungle was chosen, but it did not work out, so she was replaced by Michelle Phillips, a singer from the vocal group The Mamas and the Papas. They all flew out to Hong Kong to start filming at Golden Harvest Studios. After several weeks, filming was abandoned because Yuan Hua could not speak English very well. Raymond Chow pulled the plug, saying, "We started but we need not finish." The Demon Hunters filmed footage still exists and is kept in Golden Harvest's archives. Since the failed English version of Mr. Vampire, Michelle Yeoh's company, Han Entertainment, is planning to do a similar movie. Sequels, highly successful at the time, both in Hong Kong and as a cult film favorite with overseas enthusiasts of Hong Kong cinema. It inspired numerous parodies and homage films. The film launched Lam Ching-ying's character, the unibrowed Taoist exorcist, whom he would portray not only in the Mr. Vampire sequels, but also in many other films, including unrelated ones. Mr. Vampire sequels included Mr. Vampire 2, Mr. Vampire 3 and Mr. Vampire IV. However, most do not relate to the first film, instead simply being set on the same themes. There is in fact only one canonical sequel, Ricky Lau's own Mr. Vampire, 1992. Confusion regarding the sequels has been compounded not only by the names of the films, but also that the films share some cast members, though often recast in different roles. There are also other films of the Chinese vampire genre starring Lam Ching-ying, such as Encounters of the Spooky Kind 2, 1990, and Magic Cop, 1990, or directed by Lam himself, such as Vampire vs. Vampire, 1989, which are all separate from the Mr. Vampire franchise. In addition, Lam uses his real name for his character in some of the films he acted in. A related television series titled Vampire Expert, starring Lam Ching-ying, was broadcast from 1996 to 1997. However, during the filming of the third season, Lam developed liver cancer and died before the project was completed. The first season of My Date with a Vampire, a television series produced by ATV, was specially dedicated to Lam, and the story was based on future events in Vampire Expert. Theatrical play. Mr. Vampire was adapted into a theatrical play and was performed at the Cultural Centre's Studio Theatre in Hong Kong from 29 to 31 October 2010 as part of a Halloween theme and New Vision Arts Festival. Tang Lok Yin is the music director, composer for this play, with Pun Shu Fai as the choreographer. The inspiration for this play was that of the music directors. In an interview he said that when he was a child he watched a lot of Lam Ching-ying's movies with his younger brother. She also mentioned Lam had played a Taoist priest in the Mr. Vampire series and that is the inspiration behind the director's contemporary musical dance theatre. She also said she was sort of forced into watching the movies because her parents are big fans. On the stage it is decorated with 6 coffins and a large moon on top. Mr. Vampire. The play begins with the suicide of a grief-stricken woman. The play shows the audience the popular understanding of qi, breath, and the mythical consequences if it does not leave the body of a person who dies in grudge. The play then portrays love and hate with the use of animalistic dances alternating between kissing and biting each other. The show then transforms into a performance similar to that of Michael Jackson's music videos, Thriller and Beat It, before turning into The Rage of the Grudging Beings video game. Mr. Vampire was made into a Japanese video game entitled Reigen Dushi. It was published by Pony Canyon and certain scenes in the game were taken from the movie. The video game was released on Nintendo Entertainment System in Japan 16 September 1988 and in the United States 1 April 1990 under the title Phantom Fighter by the publisher FCI Inc. and the developer Marionette. Merchandise. A number of Japanese board games that relate to Mr. Vampire were released in Japan. Screenings. Mr. Vampire has been screened numerous times since its release. Screening include Hong Kong Film Archive, 3 November 2012, Broadway Cinematheque, the 11th of November 2012, Tokyo International Film Festival, the 20th of October 2012, University of Bath, University of Chicago, Home Media, VHS, Laserdisc, VCD, DVD, Blu-ray, online. Mr. Vampire was previously available on Netflix and Sky Player. Now Sky Go. Mr. Vampire on IMDb. Mr. Vampire at the Hong Kong Movie Database. Mr. Vampire at Hong Kong Film Archive. Mr. Vampire at Hong Kong Cine Magic. Mr. Vampire on lovefilm.com. 1986 on Suling213.blogspot.com.